share her learnings and some of her wisdom. As you've all had a go at using the chat, please do continue to select all panelists, to select everyone rather than the panelists, so that everyone can see your question. So yeah, to begin, Sally's just pressed record, so this will be available on our support site for you to watch again and share with colleagues. So we'll be covering funeral collections, untapped fundraising potential.
At this point, I'm just going to mention that next week, at the same time, we're going to have a host a meeting session. So it's an opportunity for you to talk about today's session, discussion, share ideas, maybe talk about what has and hasn't worked for your organization, and also ask questions. So a lot more interactive. It won't be recorded. So, as I say, it's an informal discussion. I'm actually going to pop that in the chat now. So I just wanted to get that out to you so that you can get that in your diary for this time next week. Just an opportunity where you can talk amongst yourselves and share some ideas and follow up from today's meeting.
Thanks, Catherine. I thought we'd start with some stats as an aperitif. So much loved work with almost 2,000 funeral director sites, and they might be small family-owned independents up to regional co-ops. So there are some kind of regional co-ops out there. And there's also the national co-op, and the national co-op is the largest chain. Funeral collection pages have an average value of £400, which is quite an interesting figure. It's worth noting that funeral people will tend to refer to tribute funds as funeral notices. So it's likely that they will be used to referring to a tribute page as a funeral notice, and that might be something to bear in mind when you communicate with funeral people. Nearly 50,000 much-loved funeral collection pages were set up last year. I like to see your role with funeral notices as you being a companion for the family, almost walking alongside them. So I like that metaphor of being a particular kind of companion, and ultimately for you to receive the baton from the funeral director once the funeral has taken place. And this next slide reminds me of that sense of presence, that sense of being with the family. So in a former life, I was a funeral director, and quite often we would see a bright, vibrant poppy wreath in the flower area. So after the service in the chapel, you then lead people out to where the flowers are, and you'd see the Royal British Legion's wreath there. And quite often the Royal British Legion would also arrange a standard bearer, someone who'd walk in front of the procession with the standard, the flag of the regiment that the person served in. So there's that kind of being with the family. And quite often nursing care homes would send staff to attend funerals, and some hospices who had multi-faith chaplaincy teams would send a chaplain to attend, and that's not really very practical, but it does happen sometimes. So there's a real connection from the care in the hospice to care afterwards. And I'm sure people who work in hospices will know how time-consuming funeral ministry is for their chaplaincy team. So it's not really practical for them to officiate, but for them to attend will be something that happens in some places. But what I'm trying to get at is that actually for you to build this sense that you are with the family on the funeral journey. Catherine's going to talk through how to access the information that's available from your partner area.
Yeah, so thank you. When you log into your Much Loved Partner area, you'll see the Tributes tab in the top left-hand corner, and it's Tributes Fundraising for You that is this area. So Jason's sharing here our test page, so you can see that on the top left-hand corner. So under there, there are some options. Your Tributes is the one that displays the tributes set up through your own offering. But the tributes fundraising for you, these are tribute pages or online funeral notices if they've been set up by a funeral director, or the funeral director may refer to them as that, which have either been set up by funeral directors. It can also include supporters coming to Much Loved to create a tribute page. And also on some occasions, if you are added as an additional charity on another page set up by another charity partner's offering. So people can have more than one charity they're supporting and you might be added on. So to be able to tell really easily, on the left-hand column, you'll see the black circle with the white dove. So that's the source where the tribute page was created. And that black circle with the white dove, if you hover over it, you'll be able to see which funeral director created this page. Now, it's going to be really useful for you to be able to export this information out into a spreadsheet and obtain it accordingly. So within the report section, this is going to be a really useful area. Scroll down to the new reporting area that we have. And then you have the tribute report. So we're looking at that now. So on the tribute report, there's lots that you can obtain from here. So you can schedule when you want this report sent to you. So what's great with this new reporting area is that instead of having to log into your partner area on a regular basis and export the report that you're after, you can actually schedule it so that it comes across to you on a regular basis without having to log in. And the information that you wish to export, when you click the download button, you can choose all the columns. So you might want to get the funeral name, and that will be the source, the tribute details. The source will be the funeral director's information. You'll want to probably get the tribute guardian's information and maybe the anniversary, the date of birth and date of death. So you can set this up, and then once you've done it once, when you log in and have set that up, it will automatically grasp and keep that list of what you've chosen, and that will email that over to you on the scheduled basis that you want. So set up the schedule. You might want a daily report, and set it all up. And then once you've saved it, that will then, as I say, be emailed over to you on that regular basis. So you don't have to keep logging in to export that information out to you. So I think that's going to be really, really useful. The other area that's going to be great is using the alerts. So within the Manage tab, you've got the alert preferences. And you can set up yourself and multiple colleagues to get alerts. And again, this will be an email that we send to you. But that means that you can actually react really quickly. So if you set up a daily alert, pop in your email address and make sure you've ticked the box that alerts you when any new tribute pages are created. So that would be tribute pages created through your own offering, but also all those pages that have been created by those funeral directors. So it's just, without you having to log in each day to trawl through to see what's happening, you'll get the alert. It will correspond hopefully with if you've set up a daily report as well to be emailed to you, you'll be able to correspond to those as well and correlate them. So make sure you're using those tools to really help you, make the most of your partnership and the functionality that we offer you.
Thanks, Catherine. So potential stewardship, and this is a massive area. This is almost a module on its own. These are just some potential ideas, and you'll have your own strategy, a strategy that you feel comfortable with. But here are just some ideas. So optimum partners can light a candle or leave a gift. So once they get that notification that Catherine was talking about, then that might be the first bit of stewardship, and that can be done from the settings area. An initial thank you once the page has been created, and then perhaps a secondary thank you perhaps 6 to 8 weeks after the funeral, and then a third communication sharing the difference that the donations have made. There's also an opportunity to signpost to support. So it might be, if you're an optimum partner, that you have grief chat, or it might be that you have your own bereavement support internally that you could signpost to. And that reminds me of memorial events that you might have planned. So to invite tribute fund owners to those events, and also anniversaries. So the whole lighting a candle, leaving a gift. Optimum partners can schedule for a candle or a gift to be lit on the anniversary, so on the anniversary of the death, and a message something along the lines of, this time last year you were thinking of us and now we're thinking of you, that kind of message. And I think sending a card on the anniversary could be an idea. I scanned our Google group and I saw that someone had shared their stewardship. So they send an email initially, light a candle, and they also send a handwritten card as soon as the page is set up, and ideally before the funeral. So there's a stress there on ideally this being before the funeral. And then the second step is at the 6-week mark, follow up with an email with an update of the amount and the option to opt out of contact. And then the third step was sending a Christmas card in the first year, which I think is quite a powerful thing to do. I also like the idea of tangible gifts as well. So memory pins. I know that some charities have memory pins. This has just reminded me of dedication pages. So it could be that you set up dedication pages throughout the year for things like Mother's Day, Father's Day, and you could identify your tribute fund donors whether the father or the mother has died, and actually you could treat those people as VIPs. So you could stagger invitations to those dedication pages so that you create an organically kind of built dedication page. We've got a webinar, I think, called Digital Success with dedication pages, and other charities talk extensively about having these VIP groups of people to contribute to dedication pages. So that just came to mind. So the point that I picked up from our Google group with the charity talking about getting in there quickly, ideally before the funeral. I'm an advocate for speaking with bereaved people. I acknowledge that it's a scary thing to do. However, I think the worst that can happen is that they say no thank you. So a phone call that looks like actually you sharing that you're anxious about getting this wrong, I think being genuine and honest about it, but then there being a however, saying, however, we wanted to make sure that you know that we're very much with you on this journey, and to also say thank you. And you could at the beginning of the conversation kind of contract to say how long have you got, 8 to 10 minutes, and then stick to that 8 to 10 minutes. I just think there's value in getting in there. And I think that initial conversation could be an opportunity for you to say, actually, did you know that you could include the QR code on the back of the printed order of service? Some funeral people won't remember this. I think it's nice that people are presented with it as an option, because they then have agency. They can say yay or nay to it. Yeah, this functionality is going to be included in our next update. So you will be able to download QR codes for each of the tribute pages that are supporting you. And so the phone call could then be followed up with an email saying, oh, here's the attachment. If you get stuck, give me a shout, kind of thing. So we know that some pages exist and there isn't a tribute guardian or a funeral contact. Funeral people are quite possessive, protective over their clients, over their families, and quite often it's the case that they don't really understand what could happen next. And I think this in some ways is a gift for you to, and I know it's time consuming, but the gift is that you potentially could speak with the funeral person and say, well, this is what the stewardship, our stewardship looks like. You can hear my dogs contributing in the background. So for you to explain to them what the stewardship journey could look like, I think is really important. And also it's better coming from you than it would be, say, for us to tell them to do something. I think if they've got an emotive connection to what the journey could look like, and the fact that they are potentially passing the baton to you is quite valuable. I think I've covered all of that. You can see that I can't focus very well with the dogs.
Yes, I thank you. So, you know, as I mentioned before, we've got the discussion. There's lots of discussion in the chat, which is really great to see. We will have a follow-up meeting next week, so do pop that in your diary. And Also, I'll just take the opportunity now to mention that our next Much Love module's on the 19th of April at the same time, so Wednesday the 19th of April. But I'm really delighted now to pass you over to Sarah from Bowel Cancer UK, who's going to talk us through what they do. Thank you. We can't hear you at the moment, Sarah, actually. Hang on, or I can't.
Can anyone hear me? Fab.
Yep.
I did show you the thing that I thought was the issue. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen, so please bear with me one moment. Okay, how does that look to everyone? Great, thank you. Okay, so my name is Sarah Farrago. I work at Bowel Cancer UK, and I have been working here for the last 4.5 years. I started as an assistant, an events assistant, and over the 4.5 years have kind of worked my way up to senior officer through all the various parts of public fundraising. So I've done events, I've done community, IG, and now I'm kind of sitting across all of them. So funeral collections, untapped fundraising potential. I thought I'd begin with just giving a bit of background about us. The reason being is sometimes it's easy to see a charity and see what they do and think, well, we're nothing like them. We're not anywhere near in the size. So I thought this context would be quite useful. So as of last year was our largest year ever in terms of fundraising, and we raised 6.3 million. But when I started, it was just, I think we were 3.8 or 4.2. So we've really grown in the last 4 years. We have about 77 staff. Again, when I started, it was 60, and COVID went down to 40, and now we're back on the growth. So over the few years, when you look at some funeral stats, that kind of is some context. And last year we raised 600,000 in memory overall. That is not just funeral collections, that's overall. And £430,000 of that came from funeral collections. And the really important bit that I want to kind of emphasize is we have a third of a person whose job it is to look after funeral collections. And that has been the case for the past 3 years. So everything we've developed, and in terms of stewardship, this is not one person's sole job. This is just one aspect of what they do. So hopefully that gives a bit of context as to, depending on who in your team, if that's your sole job, or if you only have a bit of time to dedicate, what you could do based on our experience. So again, some more background context as to how we've grown over the last few years is in 2019, we had a great amount, 180,000 income from funeral collections. And in the context as well, that was 4.2 million overall in terms of the charity size. But in 2020, we raised £230,000 from funeral collections, which was a £50,000 increase, and showed the potential of funeral collections and why we should be paying more attention to them and giving them a more bespoke and personalised supporter journey. So I started paying attention and it being part of my job in 2020, and went on to develop it and really give it some attention in 2021. And we saw an amazing increase of almost 200%. So, you know, almost double from 2020 to 2021, just having that extra personal touch and care. And then it's somewhat maintained. So going down 4% doesn't really change very much. It's pretty much the same. And now we're still looking at ways to grow and enhance the journey even more. So I just wanted to read this quote before I go into a bit more of a breakdown, a bit more of an overview as to what we do. This is from a supporter, and they said, "I want to thank you and your colleagues for the kindness and sensitivity shown to me and my family since Matthew's death. From handwritten cards to kind emails, I've been very impressed with the charity and the remembrance team overall." So hopefully that qualifies a bit as to what I'm about to say. And as I was the remembrance team, I was very touched by that feedback. So yeah, just one person. So I'm going to start with an overview, but I will then go into each stage. So don't worry if you have questions or it feels a bit rushed. I am going to go into each one as we go. So we have the alert set up. So I will get notified every time there is a new funeral page, new tribute page, and that will come through to our in memory inbox. And so when we're notified of a new funeral collection page, we will do the kind of back end things on our side. So we'll update our database in the way that we do and code the back end of Much Love so that the income of that new page goes to the right person on the database. And we will then send an initial email and schedule a candle to be lit on their Much Love page. 6 to 8 weeks later, we thank. And that is a handwritten card, and we do that to everyone, no matter how much was raised, whether it's £25 or £5,000, they all get a handwritten card. 1 month later, if they have raised £1,000 or more, we will offer to name a star in memory of their loved one. And that is a real star in the sky that you can see in the star registry. And there are 2 different packages depending on if they've raised £1,000 or if they've gone £5,000 or more. A month later, we will send a keep in touch card and or an email, depending on what they've opted in or the details we have. And that is the flow for all supporters who have a funeral collection page set up on Much Loved. The next stage, they would have to be opted in order to continue the journey, just because of GDPR. So if they are opted in, be it from the very start or if they've decided to from the keep in touch card, we will do our Star of Hope Tribute Fund offering. This is just kind of the way to shift the page from being a funeral collection and, in a sense, have a much shorter lifespan to being a page that celebrates their loved one now and in the future. And that is something that we're actually developing as well, that offering. So that offering hopefully should grow. A month after that, it's called event promotion, but really this is just other ways that they can support us in memory of their loved one. And then 1 month after that, so you see there's lots of steps in here, but this is roughly 6 months after the funeral collection page has been known to us. And then only then will they start to receive our monthly e-newsletter. So we exclude anyone who has a funeral collection on their record within the last 6 months, just because we don't want to bombard them. We want to give them space, and we want to give them time to grieve their loved one before they start hearing about other stories and other work that we do, just to kind of keep that sensitivity. And then the final step in the journey is we will send Christmas cards, but due to the nature of how many we have, we do only send them to high value, and high value will change depending on the number of high value that year. So we'll choose a cutoff depending on our capacity. Okay, so I'm going to go into a bit more into each one and actually kind of what our emails are, what our thank yous are. So step 1 was that initial contact. So once we're notified of the page, we'll download the tribute report from Much Loved. And as I said, we'll add the next of kin, or if it's just the funeral director details, we'll add that to our database and make sure the back end is coded. And then within 24 hours, within a working week, obviously, if it's set up on a Saturday, we're not working weekends, but we will send a personalized email to the next of kin, should we have their details. So the email is a draft template, so it's a copy and paste, and then it's personalized. And for us, it was really important that this wasn't an automated email, like it didn't come from, depending on what services you use, whether it's MailChimp or Campaign Monitor, as it is for us. We didn't want it to be automated, even though that's a lot easier and they can be personalized. Coming from an email address in kind of Word format makes it feel like there's someone on the other end of the email that they can actually respond to, whereas automated emails kind of feel more robotic. So we just copy and paste this template in and personalize it as necessary. And the aim of the email is to let the next of kin know that we are grateful that they chose to remember their loved one with us, and to offer them additional materials. So we also have collection envelopes and pin badges they can request. And we provide them a link to our bereavement support hub. Importantly as well, we let them know that we will be in touch again to thank them for the amount raised in memory of their loved ones. So they know that they will hear from us again. And that also sometimes prompts them to get in touch if they say, actually, 6 weeks pass and they're like, we're still collecting. Sometimes they do get in touch. The email itself is relatively short. I have a kind of snippet from it. I'm not going to show the whole email, but the idea is it doesn't want to overwhelm the next of kin, but just to be warm and informative. And And if their funeral collection page has been personalised, as you will have seen, some of your supporters will have made beautiful tribute pages with kind of lots of photos of their loved one. They'll have edited the description, the story, added lots of thoughts. We will reference that in that email. So for example, we'll add this sentence. I'm sure your loved one would have been so proud that you've chosen to celebrate their life in this special way and of the lovely photo and words you shared on their page. Obviously, if they've only shared photos, we'll cut out words, and if they've only said words. So, you know, we'll change it. And then the final thing in this initial contact with the next of kin is we will schedule a candle that will be lit on the day of the funeral. So this can be done if you go into the settings part of the tribute page, scroll down to add a candle, and you can schedule it there. We choose the thought candle, which burns for 1 day. And whilst on this presentation, I've got the background as grey, we actually do change it to a kind of teal, so it matches our brand colours. And the message is just meant to be a kind of soft touch for the family to show them that we're thinking of them. This can be a little bit less intrusive than sometimes sending an email. I know sometimes it's an idea to send an email on the day of the funeral, but a candle's a really soft way to say we're thinking of you, but not invading their day, really. So that's the message there. It says, today our thoughts are with the name of the loved one's family, friends, and loved ones. We will edit the pronouns if we know the pronouns, but we try not to assume pronouns, so the default usually is there and them. Okay. So step 2, which is, in my opinion, the most important step, and if you do nothing else, is the thanking. We will send a handwritten card 6 to 8 weeks after we're notified of the funeral collection page. As I mentioned, these are handwritten no matter how much they raise. And that is time consuming, but it is deeply appreciated. And we find that sometimes a next of kin who's been perhaps unresponsive, or you think hasn't been kind of appreciating your touch points, even a year or two later, when they do warm up to you, they'll reference the card. So it is a really nice touch point if you have capacity. But we try and lean actually more towards the 8 weeks. When I first started looking after funeral collections, I was doing it really rigorously on 6 weeks because that's what I was told I should do. And what I was finding is 6 weeks doesn't always give the funeral directors time to send in the additional checks or any offline donations. And actually you're thanking them for much less than they've collected, or it's inaccurate and you have to do it again. So I think I usually 7 to 8 weeks gives them enough time to send in additional donations. And at that point is when we would then add the offline donations to their much loved page, so that when they receive their thank you, what we thank them for in the card matches what they see on the page. And we will also make sure that before we thank, if we look at their funeral collection page, that there hasn't been any donations within the last kind of 10 to 14 days. If there has been, we'll push it back another week. Again, this is just to make sure that the collection has kind of rounded off at this point. The message just thanks them for choosing to remember them with us. It says how much they've raised and what a wonderful tribute it is to their life and the impact of their collection. Obviously, it's handwritten, so the impact is just saying something like, it will make such a huge difference to our work research and to the bowel cancer community. So it's not hugely detailed at that point. And this is something that I had implemented and has gone down really well, is if you don't have the next of kin's details, because as you'll know, sometimes funeral directors set up the page and they don't put the next of kin details in, you can call the funeral director and ask if they would pass on a card to the next of kin. And 100% of the funeral directors I've called have said, of course, they'd love to. So I'd send the card addressed to the name of the deceased's family and friends, thank them all the same, and then just address it to the funeral directors for the attention of the family of the name of the deceased. And inside the thank you card will then be some keep in touch material so that they can choose to opt in to hear from us, because that is the only way we can actually get in touch with those supporters. So this is just a phrase that's in our thank you cards. You're a part of our fundraising family that will always be here for you whenever you need us. We're so grateful for your kindness and generosity during such a difficult time. So that's a kind of idea of our tone that we use in the cards. I just also want to show you the back of the cards. We have a QR code which takes them to our Star of Hope pages. So these are, again, Star of Hope tribute funds that are just our tribute offering, and it's what they can eventually turn their funeral collection pages into if they want to continue their support with us. And they also have our contact details. So this is really important, especially if you haven't really built up much of a relationship with them, they can get in touch. Step 3 is if they have raised £1,000 or more, we will offer to name a real star in the sky after their loved one for them. At this point, we might have not had any responses from the next of kin, and it's only when we send this offer do they get in touch saying that's a lovely idea, I'd love to do that, and you start to build that rapport with the families, which is really, really lovely. And I actually have had many scenarios where I'll send this email and 6 months later, having never heard from them the whole way through, they'll respond to this email. It's clearly something that they like, but at the time they don't have maybe space for. But it's lovely to offer them something to mark their loved one. And lots of these star naming companies or trees or whatever you choose to do offer charity discounts, so you don't have to pay at the full price. If they do want to do that, then we will buy the star on their behalf. We just ask them to fill in a simple Google form, so we get all the details that is necessary for the star, like the name of the star, the special date, a special message, and then we'll buy the star. And then we will let them know that there is now a star in memory of their loved one in the sky, and we will add the virtual shooting star gift to their much loved page. So again, it's a nice redirect back to the funeral page to remind them that their much loved page exists and the kind of different things that they can do with it. And this is just a response from someone who named the star in the sky after their loved one. Thank you, and thank you Bowel Cancer UK so much for organising a star in Neil's name. This is wonderful news and it means so much to me. I can't thank you enough for this beautiful gesture. I received the certificate and information today, and I've already looked up Neil's star on the registry index and seen it. I'm really so thankful. I won't read the rest, but it said this has definitely given me some much needed comfort and permanent tribute in the sky to him. I actually really like the last line where he says, I often told him he was the best husband in the cosmos too. So for this supporter, this next of kin, the star was especially poignant, which is really lovely. Step 4 is to keep in touch. So we've gone as far as we can go in terms of communicating with supporters without kind of official opt-ins, in terms of we've thanked them and the star is legitimate. So we have to make sure that if anyone hasn't given them their consent or have previously consented, no, this is an opportunity for them to now consent to hearing from us. If we have an email, we have created a really nice and simple automated email where they can click on a button and it takes them to our kind of keep in touch page on our website. And if we only have their postal address, we will send them a letter. It's a mail merged letter or template rather, but it's personalized again. So it will reference their loved one's name and their relation to them, so that the loved one is always at the heart of every communication. And we include, as you can see in the bottom right, it's kind of postcard size. It's a really easy opt-in as well as a free returns post envelope. So choosing to keep in touch with us costs them nothing at all. And finally, steps 5, 6, and 7. I'm going to somewhat brush over these a bit because these are now the opt-in stages. So provided they have chosen to keep in touch with us and we have the appropriate opt-ins, we will offer to change their funeral collection page into a Star of Hope tribute fund. And that is kind of like the ultimate goal for us, to having built such a positive and warm relationship with the next of kin that they feel passionate about keeping their funeral collection, their tribute page going and fundraising for us more in their loved one's memory in the future. We tend to only offer this to people who've raised about £500 or more, just because we have quite low engagement we've seen from the offer for those 400 and below. But Depends on the month and our capacity as well. If we have capacity, we'll offer it to everyone. And very often, any pages that are of a kind of significant value will say, yes, please. And that is the point where, if they have been set up by funeral directors, we will email much loved and ask for ownership of the page, so that we then have the power to make edits on their behalf, to make any changes. And this helps with the stewardship, because if they want to add anything, we can offer to do that on their behalf. And then they'll go on a separate Star of Hope journey. So if they do that, they'll kind of leave this funeral collection journey. The next one is what I referred to as the event promotion, but actually it's just about continuing their love. So this is an automated email. It's really soft touch, nice and light. And it just promotes 3 things. It says they can host their own event, so that kind of community fundraising idea. Leave a gift in their will, because we know that in-memory supporters are much warmer to leaving a gift in their will. And offer them to become a regular giver in memory of their loved one, and to then tie those regular gifts to their page, because you can do that. If you're not aware, you can set up regular gifts on Much Love, so that every month their regular gift gets added to the page, which is lovely to watch the total grow. And as I mentioned, any high value funeral collections, and by high value, we're very lucky our average fundraisers are kind of higher than average. We have fewer of them, but we have higher. So we have some really nice people, nice pages to take the time at Christmas, a very busy time of year for individual giving, but we do make sure to send them a card. And that is just to let them know that we're thinking of them at what is usually a more poignant time of the year. But that is just, by the way, for the first Christmas. We don't continue this every Christmas. So that's the overview of the supporter journey. As you can see, it will really depend on how much they raise, whether they've opted in, as to where they go throughout the journey. No 2 people will be the same necessarily, but there is enough of a format that means that we can easily track and move people along. But there are some challenges and successes, and that one is tracking. It is, at the beginning, I found it quite complicated to figure out who needed what and when and how. So that is a challenge. I will come on to how we solve this. Thank you cards. Again, in 2020, that was our thank you card. And I think it says nothing about warmth or sympathy or I'm thinking of you. It is the most kind of basic looking card, in my opinion. No offense to the person who created it. Our keep in touch cards. So instead of that letter and that automated email, when I first looked after them, I would handwrite another message on these cards, these postcards, and it took hours on top of already the thank yous. And the return on kind of my time investment was very few would ever return them and keep in touch. So it was a very poor use of my time. The name is star system. We used to ask them in an email to give us the information back in an email, and that was a barrier to them asking. Whereas a simple Google form with the 3 criteria they needed has meant that that's really sped up the process and made it much easier for supporters to do that in a time of grief. Because if we do offer them a star, that's usually like 3 months after the funeral, and that's still a very heavy time of grief. And handwriting each one, that is of course a challenge with regards to time and capacity, especially when that's a third of someone's job as just funeral collections. Successes. So we did create a good way to track them. So I won't go into too much detail about how we do it, because it will differ depending on different charities, and perhaps that's a question later. But we have a database system and query that we can pull, and then we use Excel spreadsheets with different tabs for the different stages, but none of the data on the spreadsheet has any of the supporters' information. It will just have their database ID. So that makes the spreadsheet obviously secure. You don't want to have lots of spreadsheets with supporters' information on it. And then we can easily move them across the tabs and track them. The thank you card design, I think I showed that earlier in the slides, and this is actually how we created it, with a ring light, some of our candles, fairy lights in our kitchen. It came out beautifully, but it's amazing what you can do with basically very little budget, someone who knows how to work a camera and a boyfriend who can work Adobe. You don't have to go and get expensive photo shoots or ask your comms team to do too much. It can be very much in-house and made to look lovely. Yep, the success was moving that keep in touch card from a handwritten postcard to an automated email and template. Because return on those are so small, actually you want to make sure that it doesn't take you very much time at all. And the Google form for the name A Star, that was a success. I made a barrier, removed a barrier. And Star of Hope conversions. Because the journey was warmer, more personalized, it meant that by the time we were offering to continue our support of them and to change their page into something hopeful and long-term, people were warmer to the idea. So by giving them more attention in the funeral collection journey, it meant that we were able to convert more of them into long-term supporters, many of whom have gone on to raise astronomical, just amazing amounts. And it's wonderful to see how much their connection to the charity started with the funeral collection, and how I think if we hadn't interacted with them and shown them the support at that point, they wouldn't have gone on to then be passionate about doing loads of events or lots of fundraisers. So that's really wonderful to see. I'm not too sure how long I've run on for, but top tips is grieving is a long process. So please do be patient for those relationships to form. I mentioned that often, sometimes people get back to me 6 months later. And actually just recently, I had someone who I did a funeral collection journey stewardship 2 years ago, and they responded to nothing. And literally last week, they've changed their page to a Star of Hope fundraising page. They are doing marathons, events, and they're using the page as that kind of springboard and send. Grief is long and we have to be patient. We can't want amazing relationships straight away. Number 2 is keep their loved one at the heart of all your communication. So as a golden rule, make sure to mention their loved one's name at least once in every communication. You don't want them to think that any communication they receive is generic and just goes out to everyone. Keeping their loved one and the reason why they're connected to you and have chosen to remember them with you is so important. Consistency is key. So try your best to have a single name contact throughout the journey. If you have many people in your team, perhaps think about a way of making sure that the name contact is the same, or signing it off from several people, but they know. So let's say you had 3 in the team, best wishes Emma, and then perhaps underneath part of the remembrance team, which includes John, so and so and so and so, so that they know if they next get in touch by Joe, they know, or John, sorry, they know who that is. But ideally, one name contact throughout means that when they get in touch with you, they feel they know you, or at least that you cared about them to give them that journey, so they feel safer to get in touch with you. If you do nothing else, thank them. The system we have is wonderful and always has room for improvement, but at the very least, we want to make sure that we're thanking them and make that they feel appreciated for remembering their loved one with us. And finally, in terms of top tips, is take time planning the journey and understand the desired outcomes behind each stage of stewardship. So my final slide next is a snippet of our supporter journey, kind of our plan. Grieving is a really, oh no, I've already said that, my apologies. So you want to make sure that there is actual intention behind each step. It's not just because we've heard it in this webinar, it's that it makes sense to you and your charity. So this is a snippet. It continues going on when we actually have our full one, but have a think about each stage. So along the top, that top row is the action. There's that the initial email, the light a candle, the thank you, the name a star, and so on and so on. Have an idea of when that's going to happen. What is that going to include? But really importantly, what is the objective of that communication? So for the initial contact for us, it's about making the connection easy. The candle is building the relationship. The thank you is the appreciation. The star is, again, building the relationship, and go through and think, why are we communicating, and therefore why is it important? the channel is good because it gives you an idea of the varied ways that they interact with you and hear from you. If someone doesn't check their emails, is there maybe one post so that they at least know that you've thought of them? And really importantly, think about who can receive this and why. Is it okay because of legitimate interest with the thank you, or do they need to have opted in? So I would recommend creating one of those kind of tables for your supporter journey. That is everything from me. So I'll stop sharing my screen and just ask if anyone has any questions.
Wow, Sarah, thank you. Thank you very much. Sally, I think you've been keeping an eye on the chat. Are there any?
I have, but there are loads of questions for Sarah that I didn't want to answer. So, and I wanted to reiterate what Jason said. Thank you very much for sharing all of that. It was absolutely brilliant. And lots of people have expressed their thanks in the in the chat as well.
Oh, thank you. I actually hadn't had the chat open, so that's great to now see.
Yes, best not to actually, because I think it's quite distracting when you're presenting. So lots of requests for the slides. If you don't mind us sharing them, then that would be amazing.
Yep.
And
everything I've said is in the notes of the slides, so I'm happy to keep them in as well to kind of supplement for everyone.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So I just, while I'm trying to find out where we are in the chat, there are a few questions about the cost of the stars.
Oh, yep. Okay. So this time last year, I did a bit more shopping around. So we'd always been with the same partner, and I wanted to check that that was a reasonable price. But we pay about $14.99 per star, and that's for a standard gift set. So that still comes in a really lovely package. That's with a charity discount. And given that they have to have raised £1,000 for us, that seems like a worthwhile cost. If they've raised over £5,000, the star is slightly more jazzy, so it's in like a framed, quite big presentation box, and I think that's £21.99. And again, that's with charity discount.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's worth it, because it sounds like when you're offering the stars, that's when you get another level of engagement. So
absolutely, often I don't hear from them until I've offered them a star.
Yeah. Rachel asked earlier if you've got 77 staff in total, or is that just in fundraising?
That's in total. In fundraising, in public fundraising, it's 14. In individual giving, it's 3. For funeral collections, it's a third of a person.
Excellent. So there were quite a lot of questions around legitimate interest, but I think as you went further into the presentation, I think you answered that, and I think a few people answered those kind of questions amongst themselves, that it's, you know, fine to get in touch with people up until that sort of ask, that fourth, it was the fourth step, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it's okay. We've obviously, there can be different interpretations, but we view it as okay to get in touch, okay to thank them, and because it's part of the thank you and an offering to offer them a star, that's fine. But then after that, we need to ask them if they want us to stay in touch.
Brilliant. And there were a couple of questions about the cards and suppliers, but again, I think you sort of answered that as you went through, that you kind of created the design yourselves.
Yeah, so we did have a think about some graphic designs, but actually they took up a lot of time from our comms team and weren't very warm. So it was just a case of putting some candles out, seeing if anyone in the office had a nice camera, and taking some photos and seeing if anyone's boyfriend could do Photoshop. Luckily, that was me. Didn't have to be boyfriend, just, you know, anyone. And so it was all very makeshift, cost almost nothing to actually make, and then just the cost of the cards. You can ask your digital team or your comms team if they have a contact for any other thank you cards, and if not, there are plenty of kind of online outfitters that you can just upload a design to and have them print in packs.
Yeah, it's pretty low cost to get stuff printed these days, isn't it, really?
Mm-hmm.
There was a question about how you promote Much Loved, or do you promote Much Loved, and if so, how? That was...
So we have definitely ways to go in terms of promoting our in memory products and services. At the moment, it's a case of it sits on our Support Us Giving in Memory website pages, but we have in the plans to kind of make sure that in memory as a whole, including our Much Love funeral pages, gets more promotion moving forward. So unfortunately, I can't say that we've done much in the past.
Okay, excellent. There was a question about if a funeral collection page, the next of kin isn't the tribute guardian, what do you do? How do you get around that? Do you just communicate with both of them, or?
Okay, so when I refer to next of kin, it will be whoever the tribute guardian is as a named contact. We view that as the next of kin. But if they, from our side of things, obviously officially they might not be the next of kin. If they refer to someone else, so sometimes if I've been in contact with them or they ask a question, I will say that I would love to thank them with a handwritten card if you'd appreciate that. And is there anyone else in the family or of their loved ones that would appreciate it too? And sometimes that's when we find out that X person's wife would really appreciate it. And then we can work out the kind of who is the next of kin. But we view the tribute guardian as the main contact. So my apologies, I use that interchangeably.
Yeah, okay. And do you handwrite the Christmas cards as well?
Yes. So that will just be a case of how much time we have in the run up to Christmas, and then we'll choose a cutoff as to if I can do 10 cards, what's the top 10?
Okay, so I'm really conscious that we're totally ran over time, and I've got like 60 new messages which we haven't even looked at. So we might have to kind of come back to some of the messages, or maybe we'll filter them out and see if it's appropriate to ask Sarah to answer them for us, and then we can email out the responses to everybody, unless maybe we'll just do a quick one more, but then I think we should kind of let everyone get on with their day. So I think everyone agrees it's an incredibly impressive supporter journey. There was one question on about the percentage of people who give a regular gift. So that's in the kind of second bit of your stewardship journey.
So it's not that high, but I would say probably 10% of pages who have continued on have regular gifts attached. But those are things that do take time as well. So those people who do have regular gifts, their pages might have been a few years ago, and actually it's the way that they've now chosen to continue supporting. So again, it's like a longer term goal. So it's not necessarily that off the back of that email they'll set up a regular gift. It's planting the seed of the idea that they could, and that is a way for them to support us in the future as well.
Okay, brilliant, perfect. Well, thank you so much. It has been an incredibly insightful session, and I kind of wish I worked for a charity, because I'd have loads of ideas to go play with and implement after listening to this morning. So I have high expectations for everyone attending this morning's session. But don't forget to get in touch with us if you've got any other questions. And I will have a good look through the chat after the session to see if there's any other questions to put to Sarah, and we will email out the answers to you at a later date, maybe along with the recording, so you can have a watch back.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Excellent. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm just going to stop recording.